we know that we've had to fight to get our constitutional rights and to make sure that they are actually real for Black Americans and for communities of color and for those whose voices have often been too excluded from the political process. Today, those struggles continue, and the Supreme Court's decision in Callais represents another defining moment in the ongoing debate over representation, equal political opportunity, and the future of our democracy. Yet history reminds us that moments of setback have often been followed by renewed organization, coalition building, and civic participation, right? We know we're gonna fight back. And so this conversation is not just about the court decision and what has happened in the past, but it's about where we go from here and talking about the future. It's about protecting democratic participation and about ensuring that every community has an opportunity to be heard. And it's about what leadership looks like when the legal landscape changes. And so we're fortunate to be joined by extraordinary leaders whose work spans litigation, legislation, organizing, and public service. And so together they represent different but complementary approaches in advancing civil rights and democratic participation. And so in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the full bios of our panelists, but I do encourage you to look each of them up and read it. There's a long list. They've done a lot. But I encourage you to go look it up and read about their work on behalf of their communities. But we are delighted to be joined by Ashley Shelton, the founder, president, and CEO of the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. We are joined by State Senator Royce Duplessis, attorney and lead sponsor of the Louisiana Voting Rights Act. And we are also joined by Demetria McCain, Director of Policy with the Legal Defense Fund. I'm sorry, I thought my mic went out again. I don't know what I heard. Thank you, Demetria. And then we'll also hear from Janae Nelson, the President and Director Counsel of the Legal Defense Fund, and the phenomenal Black woman who argued the Callais case in front of the Supreme Court. We'll hear from her after the panel. But I want to jump right in. And so, Ashley, I would like to start with you, if that's okay. We know that court decisions shape the legal landscape, but movements are built by people, not judges. And a recent Washington Post article said that Black communities across the South are energized and engaged after the Callais decision. What are you hearing from communities across Louisiana?
I think we are absolutely seeing so much participation and engagement. Royce knows when we were at the Capitol and they were voting on this bill, because our legislature was in session when the decision came down, and then they moved a set of maps to take away our second majority minority district. And so to be clear, with Robinson versus Landry, we were able to actually gain a second majority minority district. Yes. And so for, 2 years, we've had Representative Cleo Fields in that seat. And subsequently the decision came down, and then our legislature moved really quickly. And there was a lot of subterfuge because our legislature kept saying that it's not our fault. The Supreme Court is making us do it. But what they weren't saying was that they didn't have to take away a majority minority district. They just had to draw a better map. That's all they had to do. And then our friends at the Legal Defense Fund drew like 8 different ways.
Even the baby knows that's nonsense. See?
Right, even the baby knows this is not right, okay? And so the Legal Defense Fund literally drew 8 different ways that we could create 2 majority-minority districts here in Louisiana. But one of the things I'm so proud of is that the people of Louisiana showed up and showed out. And so when we had the first conversation, about this map, and there was a lot of subterfuge, drama, no information about when the maps were going to be heard in committee, but it didn't matter because we worked with communities across this state from all over Louisiana, buses coming in from all over, and there were over 500 people that took over the entire Senate side at the state capitol. They didn't even have enough Senate committee rooms for all of the people to sit in. And, in that powerful moment to see the 4 Black men that have served as, congressmen in this state, in the entire history of the state of Louisiana, with the exception of the one Congressman Menard that they didn't even let actually, participate in Congress. But these were the only 4 Black men that had ever been elected to represent the state of Louisiana within our congressional delegation. And to see them sitting at that table testifying it was so powerful because you couldn't deny that you want to tell me we don't need fair representation, that we don't need the tool that is Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to be able to make sure that I can elect a candidate of choice. And again, I'll say it again, I said it earlier, we have one of the most powerful congressional delegations in the country. We've got Johnson as the speaker. We got Scalise as the majority whip, Letlow's on appropriations, and somehow we are still winning the race to the bottom and not getting the things that we need. And so it's important to have someone that is African American, that understands what it means to live in this state as a black person. And so, and so I say all of that to say that, again, over 500 people in the Capitol on the first day the map was heard. I mean, everywhere. They were chanting in the hallways. I even teased because they got my sweet dear friend, Devontae, with the most angry face that I've ever seen him. I said, and then he literally said, well, if y'all want to paint me as an angry black man, I am angry because you're taking away my representation. And so then my other favorite thing about this legislative session to move this map, the second, hearing on this map, they literally changed the day. So we were supposed to hear it on a Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Then it turned into Tuesday at 4 o'clock. They locked the building down. We couldn't go into the committee rooms. We couldn't wait. We couldn't sit down. On the first day, that first Friday, they closed the cafeteria. People couldn't even eat. And so why would you close the cafeteria? And so, and so it's those kinds of things. But we were ready because we had 500 box lunches because we... I was like, we're not gonna play games, right? And folks stayed that first day, that Friday. They stayed from 9 a.m. when the hearing was about to start until 7 p.m. when the last person was heard. And then that day they started at 4, and they thought that they had outsmarted us. They were there until 6:30 a.m. Okay, and so what they wanted to say, they were like, oh, these are paid actors. I was like, paid actors don't stay till 6:30 in the morning, baby. And I said, and also in the state of Louisiana, when you testify or when you sign a red card or green card, it's an affidavit. It's a sworn affidavit. And that's what they don't want to have a conversation about is that, like, paid actors got to put their actual address on this card. Paid actors would actually have to, like this is a sworn affidavit. And so I think that it's those kinds of things that, for me, that I was just so proud about how community showed up. We've seen a surge in volunteers. We have seen, so many folks that want to also, they're like, hey, I want to do a voter registration drive. My good friend Vaughn Fourier is in the room, and she was like, hey, I need a big voter registration sign and a QR code. And I was like, girl, I'll get it to you. And so, like, at the end of the day, we're seeing this, resurgence in the community, and I think that they overcalculated and they made a mistake. Because, what was interesting, too, there was so much control in how the hearings went around these maps. They didn't want anybody calling them racist. They didn't want anybody calling them thieves. And, Gary Chambers went famous, as per usual. He's saying, like, well, aren't you stealing a black district? So when you, and then y'all, let me just also say too, that wasn't lost on any black person in Louisiana, we have the second largest black population proportionally in the country. And so for them to disenfranchise one of the largest black populations in the country is unbelievable to me. Like, and I think too, like I always tease too about Callais, like it's still raw, like I think I'm okay and I think I can talk about it, and then somebody says something crazy and then I go off because it's just like, okay, we're not gonna tell lies about where we are and what this decision really means for black folks and what it means for black folks also too, not just for the South, because that was the other thing that I think we saw all of this beautiful organizing in Tennessee and every state, reacting to this decision. And, and one of the things that I thought was interesting was that I was invited to a conference. I get to, where were we? We were in Philly. I'm like, yes, Callais happened. We're going to go to this conference. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about how we're going to save this country. And I get there, and it's conference behavior as usual. Everybody lunching and brunching. We're talking about identity and politics and all kinds of things that I was like, well, sweetie, you can't have identity politics if your identity ain't allowed, okay? If you don't have representation of your identity in Congress, you can't, like all of these things. And I feel like when the South is on fire, people ignore us and they're like, the South is just being the South. And what I remind folks is as goes the South, goes the nation. And that it has never taken more than a year for any terrible thing that got seeded in the South to be in somebody else's community within a year. And what we're seeing with these particular sets of decisions, right, with Callais and the aftermath, is that they're moving quickly. They're canceling elections, nullifying elections that have already happened. And so there's an exponent on what usually takes a year is happening much, much faster. And if you don't think it's the playbook for 2028, from today until 2028, then you are sadly mistaken. We are seeing and they are using this decision as a proving and a testing ground for the things that they want to do. And what I love is the resistance that we're seeing coming out of the South and folks saying, like, you will not kill me and tell me I enjoyed it. Okay, like we are going to fight and we're going to stand. And I've just been so invigorated. It's the only thing that's been holding me together because otherwise I was like, I probably would have burned several bridges and a few relationships, but I was like, I've been kind and thoughtful. And then too, for the great leadership of friends like my friend right here, Senator Royce Duplessis and others that have just stood in the gap. And again, I want to remind folks, we've been fighting this fight since 2022. It's really longer than that, but we've been in either a legislative session or federal court since 2022. 21, I'm sorry, thank you, Jared. Yeah, exactly. And then we did census and redistricting before we even got to court, right? And so we've been fighting this fight for a really, really long time. And I think that people think that this April 29th was the day. And I was like, April 29th was not the day. I was like, because I was like, the cells in my body tell me. We've been working on this for a very long time. And the citizens of the state of Louisiana have taken that journey with us every single day. They have showed up and showed out. They have not missed a hearing, a road show, a committee hearing. They've missed nothing. And I think that that's what I'm accountable to. And I think that that's the thing, too, that as we think about the future, and folks are like, oh, my gosh, okay, we're going to have to think about our legal strategy, and we're going to have to think about all these things. And, again, we're going to have to abandon race, work around race. And I was like, I woke up black today. I woke up black yesterday. I've been waking up black, so I don't think I can abandon, abdicate, or work around it, okay? We're going to stand in it, and we're going to make sure that we restore our voting rights in this country, and we have an opportunity to do that in November.
All right, Demetria. So while Black communities as a whole are energized following the Callais decision, we have also heard from potential voters, especially young voters, a feeling of despair and hopelessness, that their vote doesn't matter. Voter apathy